I'm a highly trained medical physician who faints at the sight of blood. Not once, twice, but many times. Turns out physicians are human too. Anxiety has been a part of my life since I was a little child in Syria. I'm here to share with you how my running shoe showed me how motion impacted my emotion and transformed my anxiety. At the beginning of every school year, my mother will start assembling our school uniforms. Just the sight of the uniform triggered my anxiety, my sickness in my stomach. There was just so much unknown. Even during second grade, when my mother was taking me to school, I remember clutching onto her hand as I felt my own hands turn cold. As the rest of the children were running into the school excitedly, my mother would say, "Adil, run with them. You got to go, Habibi." Habibi is my love in Arabic. My father was a diabetic. He was on multiple insulin injections a day. At age 11, he took me to his doctor's appointment. It was during that visit when the idea of becoming a doctor became my goal. Unfortunately, he died a year later, which was thought to be a heart attack. Now you know what the challenge of becoming a doctor when you faint at the sight of blood. When I shared the story with the rest of my family, they all laughed. They wondered if I was going to be taking care of only those bloodless people. At age 17, I was accepted at the Medical College of Damascus University. Our first biology class was to study the muscle reflexes in the frog independent of the central nervous system. The process was involved taking a long pin, putting it in the back of the neck of the frog, advancing it into the spine. I really thought I could handle that. Only to find myself on the floor with a partially inserted needle in the frog's neck jumping on my chest. The thump I heard was not that of my heartbeat, it was that poor little frog. Now you can imagine what happened during my first human anatomy class. As I watched one of the students taking a knife and cutting into the body of the corpse, I was on the floor, only to pass out again in the hallway when I found myself next to another frog, next to another corpse. Well, my anxiety and fainting continued into my clinical years. While watching a vein stripping surgery, as the surgeon was pulling the vein out of the patient's leg, the operating room nurse was resuscitating me from under the side table in the operating room. As my fainting and anxiety continued, I decided to seek medical help. I saw a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with anxiety disorder and prescribed some medications, none of which I was able to take, and they really didn't help. Back home in Syria, as it is in America, the stigma around mental health made it difficult for me to share my story with any of my family or even my closest friends. I applied for residency in the United States. As you would expect, I chose internal medicine over surgery. There's a lot of cultural difference between Syria and America. But the one thing that caused me the greatest deal of anxiety was learning to drive. At age 25, I failed the driving test not once, twice, but 3 times. And even after I passed the test, the sinking feeling in my heart, cold hands, and lightheadedness dominated my driving experience for many years. I chose kidney disease fellowship at a hospital called Norfolk General Hospital in Norfolk, Virginia. Next to the hospital, there was a beautiful park. I decided to start running in the park after my kidney clinics. I established a regular running routine, which I really thoroughly enjoyed. At age 33, I got married, with 4 children to follow, and the added responsibility of new private practice kidney disease that I decided to establish. Understandably, running took a back seat. At age 40, I suffered from a severe panic attack. I was sitting in my living room sofa alone, and I suddenly felt pressure feeling in my chest and neck, lightheadedness, and I was terrified. I thought I was going to die. In the midst of this, I was able to reach my phone and call 911, where I made it into the emergency room and then into the hospital where I was diagnosed with panic disorders. I knew then that I needed to address my mental health issue. I secretly made an appointment with a psychiatrist who practices far away from the hospital I practice at, primarily because of the stigma associated with healthcare providers having mental illness. He prescribed several medications. I had numerous side effects, and I was unable to take it. So I had to do something different. Since my panic attacks were centered around my heart, I decided to up my running game. I figured that by stressing my heart with running, I could learn to manage my panic attacks by assuring myself that my heart is okay. After several months of my running routine, I made a decision to run the Milwaukee Marathon. I finished it in under 5 hours. I was delighted with my performance. So I continued to run. And every time I feel like stopping, I say mentally to myself, all I have to do is to go from one telephone pole to the next. After several months of running, I was surprised because I was start feeling better. I was less anxious, more able to concentrate, sleep better, and above all, was less panic attack without the side effect of any medications. Now you understand how motion, impact, emotion evolved. At age 67, I felt financially, physically, and emotionally ready to step down from my clinical practice and pursue my desire to establish Mental Health Foundation. This was driven by my own personal experience that I'm sharing with you, and by the fact that during 40 years of clinical practice, I saw so many of my chronic kidney disease patients suffer from mental health issues. My foundation's mission is to raise awareness about mental health, remove the stigma around it, and bring awareness to the fact that physical activity really helps mental health. To prove that, I took on a crazy challenge. I decided to organize a run, 5K of Run Walk, in all 50 US states in 50 consecutive days. When I shared that story with many of my family and friends, they thought I was crazy. They recommended that I go back and see that psychiatrist I saw when I had my panic attacks. Well, I did it. With the help of many wonderful people, we organized the events, and we had 5K in all 50 states in 50 consecutive days, and I've done it for 6 consecutive years. Each of the journeys involved 22,000 miles of traveling. Sometimes I drove, sometimes I flew. But what's most exciting about this is the fact that over 5,000 people participated in these events. Many of them shared with me how motion impacted their emotion. We all know about the runner's high after each run. But for me, runner's high lasted much longer. It was the high that I needed to control my crippling anxiety. We all know about the importance of aerobic exercise in the maintenance of physical health. But we now have strong evidence to support that the same is important for our mental health. As a physician, I wanted to understand the science behind it. In the year 2000, there was 100 papers published in peer-reviewed journals on the effects of exercise, especially aerobic, on the brain and mental health. Last year, over 2,700 papers were published on the same topic. Many of them showed how exercise, especially aerobic, increases the size of the brain, the number of neurons, and then corrections, and much, much more. The hormonal effects of aerobic exercise impact specifically the frontal and temporal lobes, the sites where our emotions, memory, concentration, and focus are centered. When our muscles contract and blood rushes through, a chemical called insulin-like growth factor, or IGF, is released from the muscle. It goes into the circulation, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it activates neuron growth and connections. It's like infusing Miracle-Gro into the body soil of our brain. Now there's strong evidence to support that physical exercise, especially aerobic, is helpful in many mental illnesses like anxiety, panic disorders, depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, attention deficit disorders, hyperactivity disorders, and even in certain neurologic diseases like Alzheimer's disease. You might know someone who have mental health illness that can suffer from physical exercise. You do not have to wake up in the morning and do a marathon like I did, or do 5K in all 50 states in 50 days. But there's just so much that you can do. Make a habit of taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Park your car distance from your destination and walk the difference. Get off the bus stop one stop before your destination and walk to your destination. What about a dancing party with your family? Hey, let's go. What about a daily walk in the park or in the neighborhood? I really never thought that my running shoe will have the secret recipe for my healthier body and emotion and overall happiness and success. I remember the days when I was holding into my mother's hand and she would tell me, run with them, Otto, you got to go, Habibi. I wish I could share with her today how her intuitive advice was spot on and the key to my thriving. My friends, mental health is complicated, and there are so many treatment options for patients like me. My work in my retirement with my foundation is to cheer for the simplest intervention of them all. Motion impacts emotion. Motion, impact, emotion. Thank you so much.